What's going on, everybody? I'm Will Button. This is DevOps for Developers, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to build and deploy a Node.js application on a Linux server from complete scratch, starting at ground zero. So along the way, we'll obviously install Node.js, we'll deploy our code to it, and then we're going to run Node.js as a service using a user account that doesn't have any permissions so that we can avoid like privilege escalation security issues. We're going to put it behind an Nginx reverse proxy, so I'll show you how to do that. And we'll also use SSL so that all the traffic coming into our server is protected. And then after we go through all of that, I'm going to show you why I rarely ever actually do it this way for my clients or for my own applications. And that's not just some kind of like clickbaity stuff to get you to try and watch the whole video. The reasons that I have for doing this or not doing it this way will be much more clear once we go through this process of doing it the hard way. Then you'll be primed to have the conversation about why I have a different way of doing it, and I'll tell you what that is. So let's just jump right in and see where we're starting at. So let me start by showing you the end application that we're going to deploy. I don't think it makes a huge difference other than you'll at least have an idea of what we're building here. And this is it. It's a React NodeJS starter app that I got from the internet just to have something to deploy. Now this actually consists of two different Node applications. We've got the React application that provides our dashboard, our UI, our front end here. And then there's a second Node.js application that provides the backend API that this UI gets its data from. And that's actually a pretty common strategy or common scenario that you will encounter a lot, falling into like the microservices architecture. So I thought it'd be a good example to show you here. So let's start by SSHing into the server that I've built. And that's the key I'm looking for right there. So if we take a look at this SSH command, I've got the SSH here, which obviously is the command, right? And then at the end down here, I'm going to log into my server as a user named Ubuntu. We've got the @ sign and then the IP address of my server. All right, now this part in here you may not be familiar with. I actually log into a lot of different servers throughout the course of my day, and I use different SSH keys for different purposes, right? And so if you only have one SSH key, then without this flag, SSH will use your default SSH key. The -I here is just me saying, don't use the default key. Instead, use the key in my .ssh folder named willbutton AWS. All right, now that's out of the way. We'll log in here, and we are magically in our server as the user Ubuntu. Now we've got a couple of different directions we can go right away here. If I'm the only one that's going to be using this server, the only one logging in, I think it's probably okay to install Node.js and run it as my user. Important distinction here is that I want to run it as my user, not as the user root. Likewise, whenever I SSH'd in here, if I were to log in as root on this system, I want to create a user account because we don't want to use the root credentials really at any point until we actually have to, and then we only want to do so using the context of the sudo command. All right, that's out of the way. Let's just create a user account just so I can show you what that looks like. Jump back into Chrome here to add user, because I don't remember what the command is. We'll just try this link here. Oh, sudo add user. Well, That was challenging, wasn't it? So let's do sudo add user. We'll call it node. New password. Password seems to be fine. Room number? I don't know what the room number is. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so now we've got our user named node. So we can change to that user using the sudo su command. And now if we type who am I, I'm node. Now the reason I do that is if I have multiple people logging into this server, if I've got an account and you've got an account and everybody else on our team has an account, we don't really know who's running the node application, right? So we'll create a node user, and that node user will be the one that is running our node process. If I do a pwd, print working directory, I'm in the home account for node. And so now let's go get the code for our application. Do we have Git installed? We do. All right. So if we do git clone and then paste in the URL to our dashboard app, there's that. And then we'll do the same thing for our API server. And there's that. So if we do ls, we've got our API server and our dashboard code on the server in the home directory of our node user, but we don't have node. And I like to use NVM to install and manage my node installations. So let's go over here to the NVM website and we can install that using this command here. So we'll do that. That's going to run. Now it's still not installed, right? Because I need to log out. And now we'll do sudo su node again. All right, so we're logged back in as node, as the node user, and I was typing the command node, which isn't going to work because we haven't actually installed node yet, but we have installed NVM, which is now working. So let's do NVM install 16. Is that going to work for us? Yep, and that's going to download the latest build for node version 16. And this is why I like using NVM, because it's super easy to install different versions of node. So whenever node version 16.15 comes out, we can easily update to it. Or whenever 18 comes out, we can jump to 18. And if we find out that doesn't work for us, it's easy to roll back to the version that was working prior to that. So now if we do node-v, we're running Node.js version 16.14.0. And we've got our code installed, so we need to do a little setup here. So let's start with our API server going into there, and we'll do yarn command, which isn't installed. So then let's do npm install. That should work. And that's going to install our package dependencies for our API server. So our dependencies are installed, which means we should be able to do npm. Let's just try run dev first. And we're up and running. According to the logs, our server is listening on port 5000, so that's cool for our API. Let's get out of here and go over to our UI app. Take a look in there. Same thing. Same thing, we'll run npm install to install our package dependencies. That install is completed, so same thing, let's check it out and see what happens when we do npm run dev. Oh, maybe that's not the right one. What are our scripts? Oh, npm start. Is that right? And so our UI is now up and running until I do this, Control-C to kill it, which takes us to the next stage of our build. To get these up and running, I typed a command which tied up my session there, and we really don't want to be in the business of making sure that we've got a logged in session running to keep our app alive. So we need something that can start and run our application whenever we're home sleeping or out drinking beer. Here's what we're going to use for that. We're going to jump over here and grab an app called PM2. So I was looking through this earlier. Let's grab this command, jump back into our console here, and install PM2 using the -G flag, which installs it globally. And so now if we do PM2, that's up and working. So we need to tell PM2 how to run this. So let's take a look at our folder directory here. And this is React, so we need to actually build this into some static files. So we're going to do npm build. Actually, we'll do it correctly and type npm run build. All right, so our build completed. Let's take a look and I'll show you what it did. If we do an ls listing again, we now see that there's this build folder here. And if we take a look inside that folder, there's an index.html file and a static folder that contains our JavaScript and all of that kind of stuff in it. So we're going to add this to PM2. We'll do that with the PM2 serve command. Build is the name of the folder where it's going to look for its contents. 8080 is the port that I want to run it on. And then --SPA just tells PM2 that we're running a single page application. So we do that and it's up and running. Now it's time to go take care of our API. So cd.whack API, clear this out. To get our node server up and running in PM2, we need to take a look at our package.json file. And oh, check this out. They've got a PM2 command in here for us. Huh. Never seen anyone do that. Let's try that though. Let's do npm start. I'll probably need to do npm run build first. And I jumped to that conclusion because we can see right here it's looking for the build folder with the index.js file. So we'll do npm run build. That seemed to go fairly quickly, which has me doubting whether or not it worked. So let's try npm start again. Hey, it worked. Check that out. So let's clear this out, and now let's take a look at PM2 status. And we've got both of our applications up and running. If we want to take a look at the logs for one, we can do PM2 log, and we've got our ID right here for each application. So let's take a look first at our API logs with the 1. And that looks good. And we can do the same thing for our front end app. And that looks good. So as far as we know, PM2 is up and running and it's managing both of our node applications. But here's the thing, if this server reboots, it's not going to restart PM2. So if we take a look at the PM2 documentation here, there's a PM2 startup command that's going to help us get around that. So we'll do this, we'll type PM2 startup and check this out. It took a look at our init system, found out that we were running systemd, and it says to set up the startup command or set up the startup script, we just need to copy and paste this command. So I'm going to copy that. But now here's the deal. To create a startup script on Linux, you need root privileges, which we've intentionally not given to our node user so that someday, whenever this server is compromised, whoever compromises it only has access to the things that node can do. They won't be able to escalate up to gain root privileges. So we're going to log out of our node user here, back as the Ubuntu user, which does have sudo privileges. So I will paste that in and we're all good. So I want to go back into sudo su node again real quick. PM2 status tells me that both of those are up and running, but I need to tell PM2 when you restart, be sure and launch both of these applications, and we'll do that with the PM2 save command. And we are all done with the node portion of our setup. So log out, I'm back as Ubuntu. We need to now install Nginx. We're going to do that with first running an apt update to grab all of our latest packages. Once that's done, we'll do sudo apt install Nginx. That's done, so we should be able to do sudo systemctl status Nginx, and that is active and running, which is good. That's real good, man. So that gets installed into the etc Nginx folder. And if we take a look, I think inside confd, there's nothing there. So let's take a look in sites enabled. Let's see. Now this is one of the places where you're going to find differences in Nginx, because Ubuntu and the Debian tree of Linux handles it differently than the Red Hat family does. So this, depending on which OS you're actually using, it may be a little bit different. Yeah, that's the file I want. All right, so we're going to edit this file. We'll do sudo vim etc Nginx sites enabled default, because we're just going to edit the default site. And let's just do this on port 80 to get going. Now this is set up to use the static files that came with Nginx. So we're going to get rid of this try files line here. And instead, we're going to do what's called a proxy pass. So proxy pass tells Nginx to act as a reverse proxy, meaning whenever something comes in, just give it to this other dude. They know what to do with it. The other dude in this case is going to be HTTP localhost port 8080, which I think is what we ran our Node.js UI on. Then we're also going to add another location directory here, location/API. Is that how we want to do it? Let's try it and see. And here we're going to do proxy pass for our API server. So that will be http://localhost port 5000, and then close that bracket. And then also I need to terminate both of these statements with a semicolon, because I always forget to do that. Right, quit, and then we'll do sudo systemctl reload Nginx, and well, it's that time. Let's see how I did here. So I want to grab this IP address, switch over to my browser, do http://. Oh, look at that. All right, let's get back in here. And sudo su to our node user, clear this, bring it down, PM2 status, and let's do PM2 log for our API. And let's create an account. Username Will, email, that's my email, password. Thanks, one password, but we're not doing that. All right, so our front end worked. I know what we didn't do. in our source config constant.js file, we needed to tell the application where our API server is. So let's go do that. Source config, nope. What was that file called? Yeah, config. Well, that path doesn't match. Let's take a look at this anyways. All right, so the docs are wrong, but we'll get around it. So right now it's set to localhost port 5000/API, which you might think, well, that's exactly where it is, which, yeah, sure, that's where it is from the context of this server. But whenever I open my browser and I browse to it at this IP address, that JavaScript downloads into my browser and executes from there. And so from the context of my browser, that API is not on localhost. It's actually on this IP address. So one thing we could do is we could change this to the IP address, but that's only going to be a short-term resolution. Instead, let's do demo.w8n.io/API, which means we need to set that DNS up, right? We also need to do an npm run build. While that's doing its thing, I'm going to go into my DNS, add a record for it. Grab that IP address, paste that in. Thanks for being helpful, Chrome, but that's not what I'm looking for. We'll save that. Our npm build finished, so let's do a pm2 restart 0, just to make sure it picks up those changes. And then we'll do pm2 log 1 so we can see those logs come in, hopefully. Let's actually just try this real quick. Demo.w8n.io/API. All right, so the API didn't work. Our front end works. That's sweet. Which means, all right, so take a look at this. We did demo/API, and we got cannot get API. And when we look here, we don't see any connections in our API server, which means we've got Nginx not routing that. So let's get out of here, go take a look at our Nginx config. I think that might be the problem. I forgot the trailing slash. Let's try it and see. Sudo systemctl reload nginx. Nope, same thing. All right, did a little digging. Turns out Nginx is configured correctly as we wanted it to. It's just that this is not a valid route. So if we actually do API users/test_me, we get a success message here. And so now if we go back to our UI at demo.w8n.io, I can log in, close 1Password, and here's our dashboard up and running on our URL. Yeah. Let's take a look at one last thing here. Oops, except let's not log all the way out. Let's go into Etsy Nginx, into our default site. So if we wanted to set up SSL on this, which you absolutely do, I'm just not going to do it here because this video is already running long and it's a demo server that I'm going to tear down as soon as I'm done recording. What you would do is just uncomment this line, listen 443 on SSL. And they're not showing us everything here because you need to also add your SSL certificates. So right here, you can see actually, let's blow that up so you can see. So we would enable our listening on 443 and then add our SSL certificate and our SSL key for that domain name. And then restart the server and you would be up and running on SSL. So now this setup is fine. I mean, really, it's fine. If you're just launching your startup or just getting started, I would much rather see you do this than go and spend a bunch of time building something else, right? Because this is going to get you up, get you running, and get you customers logging into your system, which is exactly where you want to be in a startup type scenario. But there's some ways we can improve on this. For example, we typed a bunch of commands into the terminal and configured a lot of stuff manually. So if anyone comes in and changes that, how do we actually know what they changed? So we could do backups, right? And now we've got to do backups every time we deploy new code, which puts us in the business of managing the life cycle of backup files, which again doesn't drive your business forward for a small environment like this. We could take on some type of infrastructure as code tool, whether that's Ansible or Terraform or any one of the other multiple tools that could maintain our configuration for us. But again, in a small environment like this, that's taken on a lot of technical overhead and puts you in the business of building and maintaining servers instead of building and deploying your application for your customers to see if you can gain traction with your application. Again, I don't think that's a good use of time. Now, this also isn't very scalable. Granted, you know, on a small app like this, we could put a bunch of users on this one little server without worrying too much about overloading the server. But eventually that server is going to go down. It's going to crash, and we've got no redundancy there. So if we wanted a second server, you know, we'd have to go through that whole manual process of building that again. Again, not the business we want to be in for this type of environment. And we also got to carry around our SSL certs, which always poses a risk because you've got to put them somewhere accessible. One last thing, so we don't have any CI/CD. So as you write code changes and deploy them, you got to go log in and manually deploy them to this server. And now that I've killed your buzz, you got to be wondering like,
well, what, dude? What the hell?
Well, there are other deployment options that exist that I think are much better suited to this type of environment where you've just got a small application and you're just trying to get it out the door. I'm talking about things like Heroku and AWS, whether you're using AWS Fargate or potentially a serverless solution. And you can also use Kubernetes, although again, Kubernetes is huge, massive, bad mistake for an application like this. But here's what I'm going to do, because I really like this project and I think it's really cool. I'm going to go through and I'm going to redeploy this exact same app using all those different things I just described to you. So if for no other reason you've hit the subscribe button, hit the subscribe button now so that as I start releasing these videos, you'll see them and you can see this exact same application deployed in a bunch of different ways and learn the differences between those, which ones fit which environment better, and we'll do that. Meanwhile, if you want to start like game prepping for that, be sure and check out the DevOps Roadmap guide at devopsfordevelopers.io/roadmap. It's got a bunch of things that tie in to the steps that we took here today, and it also addresses some of the concerns that I raised here at the end of the video and kind of sets the stage for some of the things that we're going to have in the next few videos. So check that out, and Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.